Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Richard Fain.
Wow, I ask you, do I have the best job in the world or what? This is what I do every day. This actually is a pretty good explanation of why we're here, and I know a lot of you are wondering about that. So we have a lot of reasons for doing this tech reveal. Of course, we want to show it to you. We'd like you to show it, to talk to your readers about it. We've shown it to others, travel agents, etc. So yes, we'd like to get the word out. But another reason for doing this is because it galvanizes everybody to understand the complexity. Now in today's world, we're going to talk about that today. Technology is sort of the buzzword. Everybody wants to get it, but we tend to think of technology as almost something you go and buy. Sometimes it sounds like you go to Ace Hardware and you pick up something. And part of what's, I think, the beauty of this is it shows one of the truths of technology is that it's hard to do. It requires great skill, and it's not simply science, it's also an art. And I think these robo screens are a good example of that. Now we use these robo screens, we have them on all the quantum class ships, and what they did was they took these big robots by ABB, which are normally used to do things like build cars, etc. And we still have some people working, so hopefully that'll be ready by the time we get there. But they took these big robots, and then they had to figure out a way to get these really fancy screens connected to them and to move together. But not only is there the technique of moving it all together, there's the art of how do you get these marvelous dancers to dance in the right way? How do you deal with the issue of they have to look right in gravity, no matter which way the screen turns? And it was a real challenge. What you've looked at is one of the vignettes that we use on the quantum class ships. We have a series of them, and because I happen to like these vignettes, we're going to end with one at the end of our presentation. But I think they're marvelous things to use. And it's part of who we are and what we need to be, what everybody needs to be, because in today's world, technology and making things easy is no longer a really nice thing to have. I mean, up until very recently, we talked about, wow, that company does it really well, and I'd really like to go because they have technology. But the truth is, that's no longer relevant today. The truth is, technology is simply something that people expect. It's an entry requirement. It's not an option. So we view the technology as being an existential requirement of any successful company today. And so we're going to show you some of the things that we're doing right now. We want to talk about what we've been doing, so past, present, and future. We'll talk about a lot of those things. But besides showing it to people like yourselves, this is also important for us as a company, because putting something like this on forces us to bring together all the people, all the skills that make something like this happen. And it's also very important that our employees understand that. So it took a lot of work to put tonight's event on, and a lot of our employees were involved in it. They get to see how it all comes together. We're also, later this week, we're bringing up a bunch of our employees. We're bringing up about 160 of them from our offices in Miami, but also across the country. We're having people come from our ships. We have people coming from our offices in the UK and in Germany. We have people coming from our offices in Australia, so that we have key influencers in the company who are able to take this back and talk intelligently about all that we're doing. It also gave us an opportunity, I guess, to thank our sponsor tonight, Ernst & Young. Again, working with them to make something like this possible is an important part of making these whole events a success, and then making the actual application on our ships. Now, before we get into the presentation itself, I'd like to introduce some of our people. The lights are in my eyes, but over here on the right, we have Michael Bailey, Jay Schneider. Hold it, because we've got a lot of people to introduce, and I don't want any of them to get swelled heads, so wait a minute. So we got Michael Bailey, Lisa Lutoff-Perlow, we got Adam Goldstein, we have Harry Coulavara, Larry Pimentel, Rob Zeiger. We have Jason Liberty, he's hiding back there. Jay Schneider, our head of digital. And we also have one of our independent directors, so be nice to him, John Brock. John also, be very nice to him because John also sits on the compensation committee, so we want to please him as well. So that's what we're trying to do tonight. We're excited to show it off because we have so many things happening in the company and it's hard to put it all together. So in terms of format, our plan is to first talk just a little bit about some of the trends that we think are happening in society and how those affect us. We want to talk about our process for dealing with those trends, addressing those trends. We then Jay is going to come up and talk about some of the digital innovations that we are working on and which we have under the umbrella of Excalibur. We call our digital project Excalibur, and we do it that way for a couple of reasons. One reason is Excalibur is a really good name. I just think it just feels good. I can just imagine holding the sword like that. But the other thing is, the story of Excalibur is for years they tried to pull the sword from the stone and nobody could do it. And they pulled and they pulled and they pulled. And that is a reminder to each of us that this is a tough thing to do. To get technology right is very difficult. And so the fact that we've used the title Excalibur is a reminder of that it is difficult and a reminder that we really have to get it exactly right. Then I'm going to come back and talk briefly about the plan for the evening, the housekeeping, and we'll go on because we have the rest of the show to show you. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about the trends that we see in society today. And the first and most important one is something we all know: the pace of change is accelerating. None of us have ever seen a pace like this before. And the truth is, the pace of change that we're experiencing today is actually the slowest rate of change that we will ever see again. And it's important to remember that. It's accelerating and we need to stay ahead of the curve. And just an example of that, if you look at what's happened in the United States, it took 25 years for television sets to get into a quarter of American homes. It took 16 years for the computer to get in just to a quarter of American homes. It took 13 years for the cell phone. Imagine that today. I don't know about the rest of you, but I couldn't wait 13 days to get the iPhone 10. It took 7 years for the internet to get to a quarter of households. It only took 4 years for Facebook. This process of change is happening so much more quickly. And some of the requirements, again, I want to emphasize, these aren't wants, these aren't wishes, these are expectations, these are demands. I've got to be connected. It's all very well and good. We used to talk about how if we went on vacation, we got to be totally disconnected. We didn't have to know what was happening at home. Nonsense. Today, I've got to be connected at all times, and both with checking my mail, but also, very importantly, with social media. And that's key to just what everybody is doing. Another important trend is this whole concept of frictionless. Frictionless is now, it's a starting point. It's not an aspiration. It's something that people expect. And what do we mean by frictionless? Well, one of the things that we're talking about here is it's got to be fast. I need it now. Our ability to wait is gone. It's got to be simple. I don't know about the rest of you. I take great pride in the fact that I have a series of instruction manuals at home, all of which have the original shrink wrap on them. And again, even there I'm showing my age, because today I don't buy a product that has an instruction manual. It's got to be intuitive, it's got to be simple. It's also got to be on demand. I need it now, and I want it when I want it, not when they want it. And lastly, it needs to be fully integrated. This isn't something that I can have one thing for here and one there. It's got to do everything for me and simple. And some examples of that, of course, are Uber, all together, all so simple. I don't need any instruction manual. When was the last time we went up to the ticker counter at an airport? I've got to be easy boarding passes. And even, who can imagine, I need to be able to order my coffee quickly. This is, I believe that's Starbucks. I don't drink coffee, so I can't answer that. Tied in with all that is the fact that people today expect experiences. We've bought the stuff. And this isn't a question of I'm an anti-materialist. I've got that, but what I don't have are enough memories. I don't have enough photographs. I need to take things that I can Instagram home. If you watch particularly young people today, as they're doing their thing, they want to experience what's going on and they want to share that experience. And we need to be able to cater to that. And it's not just the young. So the Gen Xers, 85% say they're prepared to spend more on an experience than on material goods. But they're not the only ones. Millennials say the same thing, and so do baby boomers. You can try and guess which category I fit into, but all of them today are looking for experiences. And so again, it's something that people simply expect. Now this may be one of the more important trends of them all, because family time, key word here is time. Family time means more than ever before. People want it, they value it, and the modern vacation has changed. You know, we think of vacations as something that's always been. Vacation is a vacation, people understand that. I was shocked to find out that the word weekend was coined in 1897. It was a new concept. The 5-day work week is less than 100 years old. The concept of vacations where we go as a family or as a multi-generational group is really actually historically quite novel. We're talking a few decades. 40 years ago, the parents would go, they would take a vacation, the kids would go to camp. It's all changed. And some of the drivers of that, for example, are the fact that we now have more women in the workforce. So that means they're not at home as much, and the family time to be together is ever more valuable. The grandparents are statistically now very much more likely to be involved in the daily upbringing of their grandchildren. And again, that brings them into a family dynamic that's different. And the weekend becomes ever much more time important. There's never enough of it, and so people want the longer vacations. Vacations demographically have actually increased in the last 3 years 1 day. It's gone from 15.5 to 16.5. Now, 1 day extra vacation on average doesn't sound like much, but when you take that in demographic terms, that is a tsunami. And that shows how important time is to people. And so a lot of what we have to do, coming back to these trends and how that drives us, is, and I'm going to talk more about that, but people value their vacation. So a concept that Lisa coined a few years ago was, if you think about it, I want to give you the first day of your vacation back. So people, when you go on vacation, we've all done this, you go on vacation, well, how do I do this? I need to arrange for a babysitter, I need to arrange for my restaurant, I need to arrange for my spa. And so you spend your first day organizing the rest of your vacation. So if we can give you the first day of the vacation back, that's really valuable, and you're going to hear more about that from Jay in a bit. One other important trend here that I don't think gets enough attention is sustainability today matters to people. That's really a significant change in the way that's happened. It's always been an issue, but it's been an issue in the back of people's minds. And what's happened over recent years is sustainability has become something that is expected of every company. And our clients and our prospective clients expect, they don't hope for, they don't value, they demand that we have a lower carbon footprint. They don't hope for, they demand that we source our food and our other supplies in a sustainable manner. And they expect and demand that we operate our business in a responsible manner. And that is a key change in the way society has gone. And we're trying to be responsive to that. I hope you all noticed that when you came in, there was a fuel cell powering this evening's events just across the parking lot. So again, we're beginning to use the fuel cells for power. We're planning that actual fuel cell will be going on board Oasis of the Seas after this event, and zero carbon footprint. Zero. You may have noticed some smoke coming out of the stack. I will tell you, if you see it in Miami, you don't see the smoke because it's steam. And in Miami, it's so hot that you don't see the steam come out. But it's cold up here. I don't know why anybody wants to live in this temperature. And so when the water vapor comes out, it turns to steam and you see it. So let me talk about our processes. I love these robo screens. Are they not cool? I'd like to have one of these in my office. These, by the way, this one literally is designed for and was being built for our next quantum class ship, Spectrum of the Seas. So we asked the shipyard if we could borrow it, and somebody brought it, I guess, paid overweight to bring it on the plane. But so how do we address this? How do we get to what we need to get to? What is our process for doing that? Because that's the key. Technology isn't easy. It requires real effort. And the simple answer, the first most important answer, is it's all about the people. It's the people, it's the people, it's the people throughout our business. And there's a bunch of different groups that are important in this process. So one of the groups, and the most important group, is our own people. They need to be motivated. They need to come forward with the ideas. They need to put forward the effort. And they do every day. The second group of people would be our guests. It's amazing how engaged our guests are and how much they want to be part of this whole process. So we get back 2 million comment cards from our guests in a typical year. 2 million of them. And what's fascinating is that 85%, in addition to saying, I had a good time, I hope they don't say I had a bad time, but I had a very good time or a good time. In addition to giving that kind of feedback, 85% give us some written comment, some suggestion for how we could improve. And that's fascinating. And you can't pay for that kind of advice. It's really very helpful. Another area that we get a lot of comments from are our travel agents and others. We put together advisory boards and everything else. And so that's a real source of good ideas and inspiration. And lastly, I want to come back to our people, because it is our people. And as I mentioned, we're having a bunch of them come up here later in the week. It's really important that they be part of the process, and they're what drives our innovation as we go forward. So as we look at it, we see a very simple equation. I'm big on math. We see people, different groups of people, plus giving them process and tools to make that happen, tools like our innovation lab, et cetera, and persistence. And persistence, by the way, I think you all know this, persistence is what we call, when we do it, if we're referring to somebody else, the synonym is stubbornness, but for us it's persistence. And I'm very taken by Thomas Edison's quote. So after he invented the light bulb, somebody said to him, Mr. Edison, you just invented this wonderful thing. When you see it, what happens in your heart? What do you see when you look at a light bulb? And what he answered was, when I look at a light bulb, I see 1,000 failures. And that's what it takes to make something really special. It's persistence, it's keep trying to improve it. And the result, if you put those 3 P's together, you get continuous improvement. And that is our mantra, continuous improvement. And in today's world, you have to constantly run to stay ahead. So if we look at some of this, some of the examples of where we've applied this process, we've come up with things like Central Park. I hope you've all seen Central Park. If you haven't, you should be ashamed of yourself. We also have our bionic bartenders. So I like the bartenders. But also we recently announced the Edge Stateroom with the infinite veranda. And again, it's a dramatic departure from anything that's been seen in the industry before. So that process really works for us. And I want to give you one more example of that, applying that process to an innovation that you can't see. I mentioned safety and environment before. So one of the things that we are constantly trying to do is reduce our carbon footprint. And we've been very successful at that. In fact, our carbon footprint on a per passenger basis is 10 to 15% better than the competition in the industry, because we all publish these figures. Just give you an example of one thing we do to reduce our carbon footprint is this is a traditional approach. Using a traditional approach, you basically, a naval architect figures out this is a good shape of a hull, and you try it. There's a big tank tests. These things are like 1,000 feet long, and you have this enormous tanks, and you basically carve a model, and you try it, and you see what the fuel consumption will be. It's relatively accurate, and the trouble is it takes 2 to 3 months to put one of these things together, and it costs $200,000 or $300,000. So for a new ship, you might do it twice. If you're really aggressive, you might do it 3 times. By the way, if you want to get a sense of scale, I think it's interesting that above the model of the boat, that's a guy sitting down there. And if you want to get a sense of how big the model is, you first have to extrapolate how big his butt is, and then you can apply it to the whole ship. And I don't have that measurement accurately. But so that is the traditional way of doing it. And then Harry and his team went to a new process using CFD analysis, computational fluid dynamics. And using a CFD analysis, you look on a computer, you try a hole shape, and you look for the interference patterns. So each of these lines is one isobar of basically equal amounts of pressure. So you can see where the pressure is and how much there is. You can see where it's causing it. And you can try hundreds of alternatives to see which one is best. And after working on that, they came up with this. The bottom side is the hull that we actually used. And it's about 5% more energy efficient than the base model was. And 5% is a lot in energy efficiency terms. And you can see how much better it is. But then we wanted to go yet further. So the CFD analysis helps us a lot, but going to the next level, so we used a concept that has been in use before. It's a concept that most of us sort of know about. We've all had children who blow bubbles. In my case, I have gorgeous grandchildren who blow wonderful bubbles. And the idea is, wouldn't it be great if remember, one of the big energy users is caused by the friction of the water on the hull. And so we've, for many years, tried to find ways to reduce that friction, and we use better and better paints. More recently, we've been using Teflon-based paints. But the idea of blowing bubbles and riding on the bubbles, having the bubble reduce the friction between the water and the ship, that's really an ideal. The trouble is, and I'll try and get this right, the difficulty you have is a problem called the big bubble buoyancy problem. A big bubble buoyancy problem is the bigger the bubble, the more the buoyancy. And if you have a big bubble, the buoyancy means that the bubble goes out to the side of the ship instead of staying under the ship. And if it floats to the surface on the side, it doesn't give you the reduction in friction. So what they came up with was a little bubble result. So here you have a plate, these silver plates, and they blow teeny, teeny little bubbles. Lots of those little bubbles. And the concept is, if the little bubbles don't have much buoyancy, they'll stay along the hull of the ship. And we welded cameras to the bottom of the ship so you could see that. And here on the right, this is what it looks like if you were under the ship looking out, and there the bubbles go by. And so just to give you a sense of how this works, I'm going to ask you to indulge me for a second. And I'm going to ask you to imagine that you're under the ocean and you're looking up at the ship. And so imagine if we looked up, and I'll ask you to look up. And there's my ship. And so then we say, let there be bubbles. And so the little bubble makers make little bubbles, and the bubbles come out from the ship, and they start to blow up. And notice they're all staying, because they're small, they're all staying under the ship and going towards the back. And the ship then can move forward, move forward, move forward. The ship can move forward. And the ship, instead of riding on a body of water, rides on air. And you have much less friction operating from your ship. So that's just an example of the kind of innovation that persistence ends up dealing with. So that allows me then to go to the next issue, or the next topic, which is digital innovation. So I've talked a lot about the concept of innovation. And remember, the importance is moving in the right direction and getting all of the innovation going. And the innovation requires input from throughout the company, whether it's digital innovation or baby bubbles or whatever it is. And so we are in the process, we have been in the process, of building digital tools to address these key trends. So what's our basis here? How has this progressed? How have we gotten to where we are? Well, actually we start, and there's this other company whose name I won't mention. Maybe you could guess, I don't know how you could guess, but potentially you could guess who that other company was. And in 2013, they came out with something they called the Magic Band. And the Magic Band was really quite magic. It opened your room door, you could charge drinks on it, you could go to the spa with it, you could do anything with it. It was really quite special. And it was a big advance, but shows you how fast things are moving. And by 2015, we came out with, I'm sure any similarities are purely coincidental, we came out with something called the WOW Band. And the WOW Band, again, was designed to allow you to do things digitally. You didn't need anything else. You just had the band. The band has a little chip in it. It'll open your cabin door. It will allow you to charge things. It will allow you to organize your vacation, all in this wonderful little band. But things have moved on, and today we're looking at a world where we're really talking about no band. So then we had these so-called wearables. In our case, we used it as a bracelet, but it could have been any kind of a way of attaching a little chip to your body. But now we're going, so if you want to, instead of having a WOW band, you can use your phone, you can use, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, you can use an iPad, you can use anything you want that's connected to the Internet of Things. And as we go forward, we had certain guiding principles. And so one of the guiding principles was we wanted this to be non-proprietary technology. Now, proprietary technology is wonderful because if you design it, you specify it, you get exactly what you want. You pay a lot more to get that, but you get exactly what you want. And that sounds fine, and that is what we used to do. The trouble with proprietary technology is nobody can afford to maintain it given the speed of change in today's society. So by using non-proprietary technology, as the major systems evolve on their own, we automatically move with them. So that allows us to keep up to speed as we're going forward. The second guiding principle was we needed to be device agnostic. Again, this can be your iPhone, this can be Android, this can be an iPad. If belt buckles become the next digital thing, your belt buckle can open your door. It can open your door. You'll see all the kinds of things that Jay is talking about. We also needed pervasive Wi-Fi. Now this is something we've been working on for a number of years. In order for any of these systems to work, the ships need to be outfitted to handle pervasive Wi-Fi, and we have had and continue to have the fastest Wi-Fi in the cruise industry by a considerable measure. And lastly, but definitely not least, we needed to have continuous improvement. We need to keep advancing as the technology keeps advancing and as people demands keep advancing. So one of the things I really want to emphasize here is that we're very much focused on a multi-dimensional ecosystem. We're not talking about one thing. So the WOW bands, which I was quite proud of, but now that was 3 years ago, were single dimensional. They were very good. They dealt essentially with the guest experience, and that of course is key. But also key is that we needed to give our crew the tools to do their job better. And so that's an important part of a multi-dimensional system. At the same time, we need to give people like the travel agents tools so that they can provide that at work for their guests. And then I don't want to leave the fact that we not only have to give the crew tools to do their job, but we have to provide the tools so that their life is better, getting to the ship, signing on, how their life is, how they can communicate with their home. And Jay will talk about that in a minute. And last but not least, the digital technology has to help make the safety and environment part of our task easier and better. And so that's what we have to do as we're going through this. So with that, it is my pleasure to call Jay Schneider up to the stage. Jay's going to talk about the digital experience. I might mention to you, I mentioned earlier that the concept, the title is Excalibur. I mentioned two of the symbolisms that came from Excalibur. Jay is aware that there is a third use of the sword in case this system doesn't work quite the way we want it to. No pressure, Jay.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to spend a few minutes talking about how we're transforming both our guest and our crew experience. You know, one of the most complicated family moments can often be, frankly, planning a vacation. If your family is anything like mine, your kids have a ton of input on where they want to go on vacation. I have a ton of input where I want to go on vacation that my wife promptly ignores, but the ultimate goal is really the same. Everybody's trying to plan this perfect vacation. They're researching, they're sharing, and we're working to make it seamless and easy for people to share so they can build that really great vacation. You know, what we find is you need more information. And so to make it easy, we're letting people, if they opt in, we're going to use AI to dig through their school schedules and figure out how we can help them find when their kids are going on vacation, how we can match their preferences to find that perfect vacation, and how we can make it continually be easier to book that vacation. It doesn't end there. We know that people want to get excited. We know that in some cases they want to plan every moment. In some cases people want to plan in the moment. And we'll continue to build tools to make it really easy to do whatever level of planning that they want to do. If you research or talk to guests about vacation planning, one of the things you often hear is this notion of the fear of missing out. People spend money going on vacation. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing in some cases, and they don't get to do it as often as they should. And what we hear is they spend a lot of time obsessing about the perfect dining reservation, the perfect shore excursion, and they don't often know what's available to them. And so we want to continue to make it really easy for them to find out everything there is to know. And that includes, sometimes that fear is just really simple. They don't understand our product. They don't understand what the flow rider is. And so they need more information at their fingertips to be able to figure out what they want to do on their vacation. They also, most importantly, don't want to make it feel like work. It's got to be easy to be able to book an experience, a shore excursion, whatever that thing is in the moment, be able to share it with people so that they can build excitement about that same vacation that they're going on together. It doesn't stop there. If you've ever traveled before on a cruise ship, the boarding process is loaded with friction. We wish it wasn't, but it is. The check-in process, the arrival process, the counter, the boarding process is frankly friction-filled. We want to remove all of that. We want to simplify that process. So we're going to simplify, and we are simplifying how we collect information. We're letting you take a selfie, and then we're actually using that to help enable what we're calling frictionless boarding, and we're using facial recognition to pull you from the terminal all the way through on board. And the real innovation there is getting you to skip the counter. No longer waiting in line, no longer waiting in queues, and using technology in the background to help pull you through the experience. It doesn't stop there. You know, we've heard from guests over the years that one of the big things they have from an anxiety standpoint in going on their first day is that they don't know when their luggage is going to get in their room. They might have left their pills in their baggage, they may have left their bikini in their bag. And so what we've heard is they obsessively check with their stateroom attendant to find out when their bags are going to show up. And so we're going to let them track their bags, which seems real simple, but also then proactively alert them so they don't have to worry about it. And they, again, back to the comment that Richard had and that Lisa had, we want to give them their first day back. We really want them to feel like they're on vacation instantly, and that includes getting rid of the lines and hassles that they have to go through. It doesn't end there. Unfortunately, there's friction in the vacation experience itself. There's two types. There's real friction and then lazy friction. I'll come back to the lazy friction in a second. But from a real friction standpoint, it's as simple as some of our older ships have what are called mag stripe door locks, and that's where you stick the key in the door lock, pull it out. And unfortunately, we find is new technology, your phone in your pocket, which people do carry on vacation, demagnetizes that key, and that means they have to go back down to guest service, wait in line, and get a new key. That's not a really great experience. That's a friction-filled experience that we don't want. And so we're simplifying it. We're adding digital keys to our doors. And so whether the phone's in your pocket, your purse, your beach bag, wherever it is, guests will be able to walk up to the door and it'll simply unlock, and you'll actually be able to see that in action today. Once you're in the stateroom, we've heard from guests over the years they want to be able to stream their own content. And while that seems really simple, it's something that we're adding to our stateroom, so guests will be able to stream their own content right under their TV. And then we continue to add automation to our staterooms as well. And so whether it's a panel sitting in your wall that'll allow you to control everything from your blinds to your lights, there's also a lazy side of it, which is I want to be able to do it from my bed. I don't have to actually get up and control my lights. And so on your phone, you'll be able to do it as well. It doesn't end there. When you leave your stateroom, part of being on vacation is actually you just want to be on vacation. You don't want to deal with hassle. And so the virtual concierge we're building will allow you to ask any question, get any recommendation by simply plugging into a conversational interface and plugging away whatever your request is. It doesn't stop there. You also don't want to have to remember anything when you're on vacation. And so part of that is just getting reminders of what time you have to go to dinner at, proactive reminders. Or if you've had a really stressful day hanging out at the pool, which some people can, we want to be able to poke you and remind you that it's okay for you to book a massage if you've had that sort of stressful day. Next up is, as you think of the connectivity that families want to stay connected on vacation. And oftentimes what happens is mom slips out to the gym, dad slips out to the casino or wherever, or frankly, you just can't find your kids because they're sitting in the arcade and you don't know why they're late. And so we will continue to build reliable tools that let our guests connect while on board. And so guest-to-guest chat and other tools that keep our guests connected is something that they're looking for and something we'll continue to deliver on. And it doesn't end there. If you're using the SeaBeyond app today at the event, we're going to talk a little bit about lazy friction for a second, but you're actually all participating in a big play test. And so the SeaBeyond app is not production code. It's a beta of something that we're calling Bring Me a Drink. And the idea is, part of the lazy friction is you don't want to have to actually go in line and wait for a drink, or at least I don't. And so to actually make it easier for you, you're going to be able to order on our ships drinks right from your phone, and we'll bring them to you wherever you are. And so thank you. You've all been participating in our play test, and we've actually learned a lot from it already. So it's not just about our guests, it's about our crew. Richard's mentioned our people, and it really is about our people. And so we're going to talk a bit about the crew experience. And there's really two parts to it. One is their end-to-end journey as employees with the company, and the second is how they service our guests. So before, unfortunately, our employees would have to travel hundreds of miles to and from our recruiting centers around the globe just to be able to apply for a job. No longer do they have to do that. They're able to apply, interview, and frankly onboard through our remote centers using digital tools. We're continuing to expand those tools for a couple of reasons. One is oftentimes our folks have to get from a recruitment center, or sorry, their home in the Philippines to aboard one of our ships in the Mediterranean, which is a complicated journey, as you all know if you travel. And they have to do that so they get on station at the right time before our ship sails away. And so we've digitized travel documents for our employees. And we're continuing to add things like proactive alerts. So if their travel plans change, we get alerted to that so we know how to make sure that we can get them at the next port if for some reason they got delayed in their arrival. Unfortunately, much like our guests, our crew boarding process is also loaded with friction. It's a paper-filled process. We're changing that. We're using the same technology that we're going to employ for our guests, for our crew members. And we're going to add facial recognition-based boarding for our crew so we can get them on station faster. It's an important part about getting them through the experience. And the last thing is, when you're at sea, it's hard to communicate sometimes. So we continue to add capabilities to allow our crew members to be able to communicate with their family back at home, other crew members on board the ship, or frankly, with us as a company. And like I said, it's also about their relationship with the guest. So we continue to add digital tools to help make it easier for them to do their job. That includes things like scheduling. Today our scheduling process is a paper-filled process. And soon they'll be able to just use digital tools to be able to get their schedule and report in for duty. It's not just about app-based products. You'll also see great data visualization and AR visualization that we'll be using throughout our ships. And that includes everything from our bridge to our waiters and tools that will be available to them. Whether it's a crew member scanning baggage, whether it's a housekeeper being able to use tools to record that they're turning down a room, we will continue to put tools in front of our crew that allow them to help a digitally enabled guest. It'll also include location finding services to get you that drink, but it doesn't really stop there. One of the things that we hear about all the time from guests is the relationship that our crew and our guests have. Our crew really go that extra mile to make sure people have a great vacation. And sometimes that's just from memory, remembering what you had last night, what your favorite steak is, what your favorite drink is, what time you want your room turned down. And so to simplify that process for our crew, we continue to get them data in real time so that they can help make your vacation an amazing experience. To do all of that, the variety of crew devices will continue to expand, whether it's watches, VR headsets, custom trays to carry drinks and still project technology, custom carts with embedded technology. All of that is going to continue to expand. And apparently, according to Richard, we're going to have to start working on belt buckle technology for our crew as well. So with that transformation, I'm actually going to bring Richard back up on stage to talk about our digital rollout and then get you going through our immersive experience. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Jay. Actually, Jay, wait 1 second before you go. One of the things you may not be aware of, there's clearly an advantage to being head of digital. You get to have the screens say thank you at the end of your presentation. He did that during all our rehearsals. So quickly, what we're doing with the digital rollout, how are we bringing this out and how are we bringing it out so quickly? So there's two approaches to new digital tools. One I call the Big Bang approach, where you get it all perfectly, and when you finally got it just the way you want it, you announce it to the world and you bring it out there. The other approach I call the expanding universe approach, which is you start and you keep getting it bigger and better. And the beauty of the Big Bang approach is it's all there at once, but you can never get it right the first time. Nobody gets it right the first time, and there's always something that you want to do. So we've followed the expanding universe approach. So we start out, bring it out slowly, and keep adding things. The result is, it allowed us to start launching this in August of this year, the new digital, the Excalibur systems. We started it in August. We then